everybody here. We're convening our meeting, CCTA, Citizens Advisory Committee meeting, on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. At this time, I will ask that, do we have any speakers cards? No? Okay. So we're going to go over the approval of summary of actions, and if anybody has any corrections at this time. Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Do we have a vote? Approved. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstaining? That's it. Approved. Number 1.0 is our general business. We'll be going over our attendance log. It should be on the third page of your agenda packet. If anybody sees any errors, please indicate.
Yes, Vice Chair. I have a comment about the attendance record.
Yes, ma'am.
I see that there is a member that has never attended our meetings, the representative from San Pablo. I believe that our bylaws state that if there is 4 meetings that have not been attended, then we need to contact them and have them terminated from the position.
Let's ask Ms. John, has that gentleman been contacted?
We will contact them tomorrow and find out if they would like to still serve on the committee. If not, we will look to the city or town for a new appointment.
Okay, please report back next month. Okay. Does anybody have any issues with the upcoming CCTA meeting calendar for the following year?
Vice Chair, I just have a comment. I won't be present next month. I am at the Marines Memorial for the Gold Star family event.
Well, that's a very good reason, and we look forward to supporting you, and we will miss you. Okay. If not, I will move on to our further major discussion items. We have a presentation today about the next generation of the Clipper card, which we look forward to. And we have a gentleman here from the Clipper Management Group, and he will introduce himself. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jason Weinstein, and I work in the electronic payments section for the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and I'm specifically responsible for the Clipper program. So fare collection's been in the news a lot lately, and Clipper's already delivering some of what people want in terms of a single payment method. And this evening I'm going to give you a preview of the coming improvements of the Clipper system. But before I get to the improvements, I'd like to discuss where we are today. And responding to public demand, TransLink, formerly TransLink, now Clipper, has been offering seamless travel since 2006, and you can use it on 22 different transit agencies here in the Bay Area. Customer satisfaction is high, and I put a little blurb in there for the East Bay operators, which is comprised of County Connection, Tri-Delta, Westcat, and Wheels. It's an operator group that we've got. I know not all in Contra Costa County, but I just wanted you to see that the Clipper usage from October 2018 to October 2019 is up significantly, from 26% to 48% market penetration on Clipper, primarily due to County Connection. Theirs has gone from 26 to 74%, so congratulations to them. Clippers are available on almost every transit operator in the Bay Area, and it's multimodal. You can use it on bus, train, light rail, cable cars, ferries. You can use it for bike share. It's a single card that holds passes for multiple transit agencies and cash value. It offers seamless transfers, often with discounts between systems, and it automatically calculates the correct and best fare, applying all discounts and transfers. The high-level customer satisfaction is indicative of Clipper's excellent customer service, and Clipper serves the customers well, but the system's aging. So it requires, and today's system requires lots of customization. You may have heard if we want changes to the current program, they're often very complicated and expensive to do. So that's one of the reasons why we're moving on. So our next generation system is going to be even better than we are today. People will have more choices about how they can pay. We have an existing website and retail network. There'll be a new mobile app, which I'll talk a little bit more in detail about in about a slide or so. Travelers will be able to use their value sooner and take advantage of other benefits as the new system rolls out over the next couple of years. Software upgrades and new equipment will be seen on buses and in train platforms. And some of the challenges of the current system, where managing multiple accounts, maybe having a child account, managing those will be a thing of the past. We'll be able to do those all in one place. And the new system will be able to integrate better with other services. Today we have a partnership with Lyft to allow people to unlock bikes with and we're also working on a similar arrangement with a car share provider. However, once the new system is developed, we'll be able to expand beyond these to offer payment for paratransit and even transit parking. The new system will also provide the flexibility to create partnerships that we can't do today. Okay, so as I mentioned, the Clipper mobile app will sort of transform how we are able to pay using Clipper. So using the Clipper mobile app, you'll be able to create what we're calling a mobile card, which will live on your phone, and then use your phone to tap and pay. Mobile card will work much like your plastic card does today, but it'll have additional benefits such as being able to use the pays like Google or Apple or a debit card to add value. And I think the best part about this is that the value that you add on your mobile card will be available for immediate use. So there's no, some of the challenges we have today about loading value on your plastic card, if you don't do it at a ticket vending machine or at a retail or someplace, the value is not there until you touch one of the devices in the system. So that won't be the case with a mobile card. But don't worry, if you love to use your plastic card, you can still do that and manage the card with the app. So, okay, a little bit about the schedule. It's a very high-level schedule here. As I mentioned, the way that we add value today in the system are with what are called action loads. And when you load value on the web or on the phone, it sends a message that goes out all the devices once a day. What we're doing, at least at the very beginning part of this year, it should start rolling out in the next month or two, to wired connections, so like BART and Ferry and Caltrain, places that have wired connections. Unfortunately, sorry, not the buses at the moment. If you loaded value in one of those ways, like on the web or on the phone, those actions will get sent out a couple of times a day as opposed to once a day. So you might be pleasantly surprised, even if you loaded value on the web or on the phone, to find the value there later that day as opposed to the next day or several days later. As I mentioned, the mobile app will be available for use. We're currently planning at the end of this calendar year. I can say that now that it's 2020. And we'll have new devices rolling out to buses, like many on the fleets that you have in your areas, starting in mid-2021. We'll start in earnest the middle of this year working on the account-based system, which will be the next generation system. We'll transition customers to that system starting mid-2022 with a full transition by the end of or middle of 2023. Okay, just a little bit about the governance of the program. You can see on the left here, we have a governing board called the Clipper Executive Board, and the logos here are of the the GMs of those respective transit operators sit on that board, along with the executive director for MTC. You can see we have the Clipper program. I sit here, and we have our commission, which essentially MTC acts as the contracting agency on behalf of all the transit operators. So the contracts are MTC contracts, but we're doing it in constant contact with the Clipper executive board. In the middle, you see the system integrator contract. This is the large contract that we have with Cubic we executed last year. Today, Clipper is like a single unit. The next generation system, we split up a little bit. We have a system integrator contract, and then we have these 3 contracts that will roll out in the next couple of years here. One specifically for Fair Media, one for customer service, and one for payment processing. We wanted to do that so that we have a little bit more control over being able to mix and match services as opposed to having one large contract. And then we perform the customer education and outreach and directly to the customers. So we're building on the success of others, and we're looking to other regions' experiences in building their next generation fair payment systems. We continue to seek out best practices whenever and wherever possible. And finally, to sum it up, Clipper works, but it's in need of an upgrade, and that's exactly what we're giving it. So we're taking the successful but aging system and bringing it up to date while preparing for the future. It won't happen overnight, but you'll be able to see incremental improvements, as I mentioned, over the next few years before the full transition to an account-based system offers the greatest convenience to customers. And that is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do you have any questions for him?
I'll start out. Is there any transit agency in the area that is not on Clipper yet?
There are a couple. I can think of, like, for example, Delta Breeze. They didn't want to join. I don't. There's probably a few. I off the top of my head, I can't. That was one that came to mind.
Okay.
But
Now, question on the technical side is,
Sure.
I get the app in. You have the app available today?
it's not available today.
Okay.
It will be available hopefully at the end of the year.
Assuming then, will we have to wait till all of the buses and BART changes so that they can read it?
No. So we'll have a first generation. So today we have this card-based system. The first version of the app will actually work within that card-based system. So one of the challenges is that, there are many transit operators that have their own mobile apps at the moment. Oftentimes they offer products that are not available on Clipper. During this first phase of the app, all the business rules, all the rules that currently work for a plastic card will be exactly the same for the mobile app. Because it's really being created within the old system. But as we transition to the account base, we'll roll out a version update of the app such that all of those things theoretically would be included, and we could sort of work with our transit operator partners to potentially phase those apps out if they're duplicative.
One final question. Since I'm prehistoric on my cell phone, will I have to go buy a new cell phone?
You shouldn't. I think our app will be supported by at least the previous 2 versions of whatever the current operating system is. Right. So I don't know what kind of phone you have, but if it has NFC, generally speaking, you're going to be fine.
Jason, I have a question for you. So you're saying the current system has, if you enter money in, it does not receive automatically on your card?
Well, it's complicated, yes and no. So like if you go to a retailer or you go to a ticket vending machine, when you load that value, you touch your card to like a little disc, right? When you do that touching, the value is there immediately. But when you load value, let's say on the web or over the phone, there's no way you're not touching, your card doesn't touch anything in the system. What it's doing is creating an action that goes out to all the devices in the system. And when you next touch your card to one of those devices, that's when the value gets loaded. Oftentimes with buses, because our system is not wireless at the moment, buses, the way they work today, they actually have to go back to a yard to collect the information. So it's not like it's there on so generally speaking, you can get value if you go to BART or to Caltrain or something or a ferry that has like a wired connection, generally much faster than on a bus. But it's a common complaint. If you have auto load, then that's not something. So we've made many pushes over the years to get people to have auto load, so that kind of thing wouldn't be an issue. But we understand for some, either for a variety of reasons, whether they just don't want to or it's out of their ability to do so, then we're just trying to meet everybody where they are.
So when we have account-based system, it'll automatically link into the account
And all our devices will be not Wi-Fi, but they'll be connected wirelessly to the internet, so that it's going to be constantly updating.
My second question is that the website or design that they're building, is there a certain type of dashboard where kids, parents, they can do lockout on cards, they can a system where you can manage multiple accounts and link back and forth in case like you have a family account? Are they building capabilities into a dashboard of such?
I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like, but yes, you'll have the ability to manage multiple types of cards from one location. Today, it's a little complicated because every card requires an email address. If I see people nodding their head, so it makes it challenging. Now you can have multiple cards associated with you, but cards associated with others are a challenge to manage. So it's not like it's one. If I have 10 cards, I can look at all of my 10 cards, but I can't unless they're registered to me and somebody else is using it. It's a little more complicated.
Thank you. Do we have other questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. First of all, nice presentation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I have some friends who were here visiting from Norway. Arinda BART station is all Clipper. Can't write BART. So what's, and I don't know if this is a question for Patricia Nelson, who is the manager of Clipper at BART, or for you, how do people ride the system when the system will only accept Clipper and they are not locals?
Sure. So I do work with Patricia Nelson quite regularly over at BART. I would say, well, in the future, having the app will be great. So if generally speaking, you're visiting from wherever you're visiting from, you would look for whatever the native thing might be to allow you on the system. You can purchase a Clipper card at any BART station, so there isn't really a barrier there, and other than potentially the card fee, I would suppose.
Yeah.
I will say that for every trip that you take with a MagStripe ticket, it costs you 50 cents more. So for every round trip, that's $1. You take 3 and cards paid for.
Is there a discount for seniors?
Yes. There's discounts on many systems. I couldn't tell you all of them off the top of my head. BART, I believe, it's a big percentage.
And do you know what the cost for the app is?
I do not have an answer to that at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Yes, representative from Clayton, Edward Miller. 2 questions, actually 3 probably, but the first one is one of the things that's historically, it's been a while since I've ridden BART at some of the parking stations, but one of the historical things that was irritating was that you had your Clipper card, and yet unless you had a preload on parking, you could not use that to remit fees for parking. Has that changed? I also did hear you when you said we're going to do the system as it exists today, and then we're going to make small changes as we go.
So one of the one of the things that we're going to do for BART, so the way parking at BART works today, there's 2 ways that you can do daily parking, and then there's monthly parking, right? So for daily parking, like for example today, I came here to Pleasant Hill BART, and I had to put $3 in the cash machine there and type in my thing. But if there is a daily parking I think you can do through BART that allows you to link your Clipper card to it, so all you have to do is touch the. So in the future, what we'd like to do is sort of eliminate that middle step. I don't want to get too in the weeds, but the same security technology that's in the little, what we call hockey pucks that's on the gate that you touch your car to today, we're going to put in those parking validators, so it should be a little more seamless as it relates to that
Glad
payment
to
for
hear
daily
that.
parking.
That's important to me. One of the more complex questions is, one of the things that I've read about is a desirable feature is this concept of end-to-end pricing, which is going to be the most complicated and obviously not the first thing that you release with this. But I'd like to just hear if it's on your radar. There was the famous quote in the newspaper of the lady saying, for the price for me to get from the North Bay to the city, I could buy a bus ticket to Southern California.
Well, I mean, I don't want to use the rail analogy, touch a third rail of, fares. I mean, essentially, Clipper is the program that collects it. And there are plenty of people at MTC, the MPO, that are working with the region to figure out fare simplification and what that looks like. I mean,
I get you're the man in the middle. You're the piece in between.
Right.
I get that.
But I will say that it is a key component, and there are folks working with the region, and I think they're establishing some good momentum there.
And then my third question, which will be very short, is are you guys looking to source the microtransactions from hopefully like a local vendor, give some jobs here locally?
Oh, in terms of the payment?
Yeah, the payment processing system.
It's a little bit in the future. But in terms of we're going to try and cast our net wide and get the best that we can for the region.
Very good. Thank you for answering my questions.
Go ahead.
Hi. So similar to the question Ed just answered or asked, I have a question. Is the customer service that we do provide for the Clipper card, is that done within the county and by Contra Costa residents?
So the current, just for everybody's edification, the current system is a design, build, operate, maintain. It's a single contract. Part of that is the customer service. So Cubic is the vendor for that, and they actually do have their customer service agents are here in Concord. So yeah, I don't know the exact address. In fact, they just picked up some additional space for this new program as a sort of a maintenance depot as well.
Great, thank you. That's good to hear. Regarding just transit parking or sort of parking in general, I know there had been a pilot a way back with Clipper Card with certain garages and SMTA,
right?
And that had stopped at a certain point. Has it renewed, or is that something that we're looking to, I don't know, renew, maybe offer incentives to carpools or something like that?
So what I would say is, there were 5 parking garages in San Francisco a number of years ago that we had been sort of testing the acceptance of Clipper. And we're going to use that information to help us sort of figure out what makes sense along with the transit operators participate in Clipper. Because in that case, they weren't really transit adjacent, right? But one of the main reasons why we discontinued the program was the cost benefit of it. What we were paying in terms of O&M for the service wasn't even close to being covered by what we were getting in terms of revenue for it. But I mean, again, it was a pilot just to determine, does this make sense? Will people use it? And I think the answer to that is yes. You just need to make sure that it's strategic to the
Cost effective.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much.
Sure.
Anybody else? Yes.
Hi, Claire Linder, Concord. Thank you. I use Clipper quite a bit. My first question is, when you say that it's an account-based system, does that mean that you will have to have a smartphone to use Clipper?
No.
Okay.
So, real quickly, so the card today, that's the account of record. like literally the value lives on this card. In an accounts-based system, much like your bank account or a credit card or a debit card or something, the card acts as like an identifier, and all the stuff's in a back office. That's what the new system will be like.
Okay, thank you. And my second question was following up on Mr. Miller's questions about parking. I read recently that Clipper cards will now be available on Bike Link at select locations. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
I don't. I might have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
That's
It's available on Capitol Corridor and a couple other places. And the PR blurb said, check back for updates. So I was hoping it will be here soon. I'm parked out here. I ride my bike here.
okay. Maybe I can. I'll
Offline, sure.
yeah.
Is that all? Thank you for your time. And
Thank you.
so it looks like we have a presentation by, I hope I don't mess up this name, Randall H. Iwasaki, our Executive Director. Good morning. Afternoon.
I'm the Executive Director here at the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. It's great to be here. I have 60-slide presentations, and I gave it in Boston. It's about freight, and I thought you'd be interested in a little bit of freight, maybe a little history. And so if you get tired, nod off, just wave your hand, and I'll stop, and then I'll answer any questions, and then we'll call it an evening. So wherever I go, people ask, where's Contra Costa County? And that's that white dot. It's in the Bay Area. Not a lot of people know where we are or what we do. And so my commitment to the board has always been, wherever I go in the world, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are, what we do, and where we are. And so we're a sales tax authority. We're a staff of 20. We manage a multi-billion-dollar suite of projects and programs for you, Contra Costa residents. We actually administer all facets of project delivery, from planning all the way through construction, which isn't typical for most counties. Most counties have Caltrans do the work on the state highway system and interstate system. But my job depends on our ability to deliver those projects on time and under budget. And so with a track record that my old team has, because I used to work there, you're really rolling the dice. And so what we do is we tend to take the risk ourselves. And so far we've been, knock on wood, pretty good at that. We're also a congestion management agency by law, and so for our county, and so we measure congestion at a number of different locations throughout our county, and we produce a biannual report on congestion. And then we founded the largest secure autonomous vehicle test bed in the United States, and I have some slides on that, I think, in here as well. So these are some of the things that we do. We administer the project delivery process. We also fund programs. So we 18% of the yearly allocation of sales tax goes to the cities by formula, and they develop a paving program. And so hopefully we're going to catch up one of these days with our need to fill all the potholes and make sure that our infrastructure is well taken care of. We have a Safe Routes to School program. For the first time since the Benicia Martinez Bridge was delivered, that's when we got rid of the last ferry operation in Contra Costa County. We reestablished that a couple years ago from Richmond to San Francisco. The model showed that the ridership would be X by year 5. We've exceeded that number. So rather than to sit on Interstate 80, I think people want to move, and they like moving across the water. And so that has gone beyond the 5-year mark for as far as attendance. The BART extension, which we also oversaw all the bridge construction for that extension, that's over the 5-year mark as well, and within the first 6 months carried over 1 million passengers. So I think Contra Costa County is ready for a very solid, a very good, a very reliable transit system to move around our county. And then we have a number of we build bicycle and pedestrian pathways. We try to make them as safe as possible. Bruce is here tonight. He rode his bicycle here. And he told me he came just to hear me speak, and I better be entertaining. So I'm going to do as best I can. So one of the things that we say is we can't build our way out of congestion. We're widening Interstate 680 right now in the southbound direction. We'll have the longest contiguous HOV lane, express lane in the Bay Area. It'll go from the Benicio Martinez Bridge all the way down to the county line, and it'll be tolled. And it's not the system isn't designed to make money. The system is designed to manage traffic, to give you options. So if there's no capacity in the HOV lane, there's not going to be a toll because you can't get in it as a single occupant. But when there is capacity and you're a little late, you can pay a toll, get in that lane, you free up a space in the mixed flow lane for somebody else. And so it's trying to balance that system for those that are late for a meeting, late to pick up their children at night when they have to pick them up from daycare, and or a plumber or a person that mows their lawns and can get one more job in, and they're going to make that whatever the toll is back in that one job or one project that they can do. So we're looking at technology. We're looking at different ways of managing traffic. And so if you look at history, we've done a pretty good job of managing congestion. You look at Contra Costa County in 1990, we had a population of about 809,000 people. Today we have 1.147 million people. Congestion has risen, but population has also grown. Plus the economy is very, very hot right now. So there's very few people out of a job. And so everybody drives to work in the morning at the same time. Everybody comes home at night at the same time. That's what makes our job so difficult. So we're doing a multifaceted approach to dealing with congestion. But I'm here tonight really to focus in on the history of freight. So many, many years ago when Bruce was a young man, Wells Fargo started a stagecoach business in 1852. And at one time they had the largest stagecoach fleet in the world. Now, you don't see a lot of stagecoaches in the world, and you hear a lot about technology taking away jobs. So imagine 1852, let's call it 1872, as the stagecoaches, the railroad was introduced and the stagecoach started going this way. Do you think people were complaining about a loss of jobs in those days? They changed jobs, they transformed their jobs. So where you're a wooden spoke maker, in the future, you don't make a lot of wooden spokes anymore, but they're making rims or making other things. And so I just say that because there's a lot of concern about job creation and job displacement. And so over the years in transportation, we have radically changed from a horse to a stagecoach, now to the Iron Horse in 1869. The Union Pacific Railroad and the Central Pacific Railroad combined to create the first transcontinental railroad across the United States. And this is just a picture of Coca-Cola, a bottling company in Alabama in 1930. This is a Mack truck. This was specifically designed to haul more bottles. And you notice in those days they were worried about each bottle being sterilized. So it's home delivery. It's delivery right to your doorstep. That started with milk. So Cloverdale Farms here in the Bay Area started delivering milk in the 20s. So I remember when I was a little kid getting a bottle of milk delivered onto our doorstep because I lived in the Central Valley, and that was pretty cool. And then my mom would put the bottles back out, and they would come pick them up and replace them. So then we started carrying freight through ships. And so this ship right here carried about 9,500 containers. They call them TEUs, or 20-foot equivalent units. So 9,500. The Ben Franklin carries over 20,000. So 14,000 TEUs. You can stack them end to end. They go all the way from here to Sacramento along Interstate 680 and along 80. That's how much freight these ships carry. And you have to unload them, either split them, get them on rail and or truck, and move them out to you, the consumer. And sometimes you get mad when you're passing a truck because there's a lot of trucks on the road. Why? Because there's a lot of goods are delivered by trucks. So this was a pilot project developed by Samsung to put a TV on the back of a truck so you can see in front of it. So if you want to pass, you can make a safer maneuver. So freight today, very important. So for the first time in the history of the United States, the FAST Act, that's the Surface Transportation Bill signed by the President a few years ago, had provisions for freight. And I was fortunate enough to be named the chairman of the National Freight Advisory Committee, but it established a national freight policy for the first time. and we developed a comprehensive freight plan that's really sat on the shelf since President Obama termed out and the new administration, the Trump administration, came in. They haven't done anything with that plan, but our suggestion when we go to Washington, D.C. is dust off that plan, take a look at it, because it has some pretty good ideas in there to help continue to move freight into the future. Freight is very important to the economy, so in Southern California, 1 in 8 jobs in Long Beach are created by the freight industry. 1 out of every 8 jobs in Long Beach. There's 316,000 jobs, or 1 in 22, in the 5 Southern California regions, so the 5 counties down there. And about 1.4 million jobs are created throughout the United States that are related to the Long Beach generated freight. So it's a big multiplier. It's part and parcel to us being rated the 5th largest economy in the world, just the state of California alone. So cargo shipping, I mentioned that before, so 10,000 TEUs in 1998 today. It's over 20,000. It's amazing to me that these ships can carry that much and they can unload them very, very quickly. Way stations, you like this. Why? Because you want those trucks moving throughout the system. You don't want them pulling over, idling by your houses and creating particulate matter for the kids to breathe. And so what we've done is we've used technology to keep the trucks on the road, but make sure they're under 80,000 pounds so that they don't wear the roads and the bridges out quicker. And then we're moving a lot of tonnage by rail. Rail is the most efficient way to move not only goods, but people. It's the most efficient way to do that. So there's going to be a lot more tonnage moved in the United States. And trucks are very important. So one of the technologies that we actually were testing Uber Freight out at Gomentum Station. But 10.8 million tons are going to be moved by truck in 2015. And it's going to increase almost 50% by the year 2045. So truck drivers, you read that technology could take away the truck drivers' jobs. There's not enough truck drivers. And a lot of truck drivers don't want to drive all night long and be away from their families any more than you do. And so we're trying to find ways of using technology to eliminate that issue so that truck can drive by itself long distances, but when it needs to fill up, when it needs to unload or load, it's going to have a human driver behind it to make sure it can make those complex moves through urban settings. 70% of the goods are transported by truck. So platooning, Peloton, Josh, the CEO of Peloton, actually grew up in Lafayette. He now has his office in Sunnyvale. We're trying to convince him to move his office to Concord or somewhere in Contra Costa County. We're employee smart people rich. We're jobs, tech jobs poor. We're trying to move those jobs here to Contra Costa County. And from a transportation perspective, as a person that's been in this business for 37 years, in the old days, I never was asked to create smart jobs, but now we're being asked to not only create smart jobs, but figure out a way of creating affordable housing and all these other issues as well. So the job's getting more and more complex. And safety is a big priority for us. In fact, it's our top priority. And so a lot of accidents are caused by trucks. So let's figure out a way of eliminating those fatalities by using technology. And we're in the midst of a mobility revolution, and we like autonomous vehicles. Why? For these reasons: safer, less congestion, better air quality, and improve accessibility. This is important, this accessibility issue. This technology is the only technology I've seen in my 37 years that can help us get to the underserved, the people that choose not to own a car, they can't afford a car, they're elderly like me, I can't walk as fast anymore, and or the disabled. Let's figure out a way of getting them the services that they need, and I've got a slide on that, or we have a slide on that as well. So we're changing the way we plan the future. Why? Because you don't want us working on a project we won't need in 20 years, because it takes us about 20 years to deliver a project to construction. And so we're making darn sure that we're working on the right projects. So Tim Hale is still behind me. He's the Deputy Executive Director for Projects. So we don't want him, because he's younger than I am, see? So we don't want him working on the wrong project, so then he calls me up when I'm retired in an assisted community yelling at me saying, you made me work on the wrong project. No, we're trying to work on the right projects. And we're also worried about the climate. And so in our county, Matt is here. So Matt ran a reverse model of how do we meet a greenhouse gas reduction goal that Governor Schwarzenegger set, and also Governor Brown, of an 80% reduction of greenhouse gas levels from 1990 levels by the year 2050, by an 80% reduction. Well, we think we need a 58% zero-emission fleet turnover, and we also need a slight reduction in VMT, vehicle miles traveled per capita. So we're trying to figure that out now. And one of the things that we've done is we've created an electric vehicle team, and we have a readiness blueprint. So that was funded by the Energy Commission, and we're going after phase 2 money. How do we array the next generation of charging systems for your electric vehicles, your plug-in hybrids for the future, so it makes it more conducive to buy one of those vehicles? I said I'd talk a little bit about Gomentum Station. It's actually a global test bed. We've signed a lot of agreements with other countries. We're trying to entice an investment here into Contra Costa County. And once again, these are the goals. Job creation. Susan Bonilla, I don't know if you remember Assemblymember Bonilla, but she was one of our board members. One night she pulled me out of the office, took me to the lunchroom, and she said, you need to go and find a way of creating smart jobs out at the weapon station. And I said, yes, ma'am. And I said, where's the weapon station? She says, it's that way. So I went out and we created the largest secure autonomous vehicle test bed. But these are the ideas. Job creation in our county, which creates a reverse commute. Efficient mobility. If cars refuse to crash, about half the congestion in California is non-recurrent. A majority of that's accidents. So let's eliminate the accidents and make our system more efficient and save lives. It's enhanced safety. And then we really like clean vehicles. We want a healthier environment. And so there's been some improvements out there. We used to say that Gomentum Station is the ideal test bed because the pavement is old, the bridges are old, the striping is lousy. Why? Because most of America, the striping isn't that good, the pavement isn't that great, and the bridges are sometimes non-standard. If you're riding in a vehicle with no driver, you want to make sure that it's gone through the worst case scenarios before you get in it than after you get in it. Make sure it works properly. So this is a great test bed for that. And we have a lot of partners at Gomentum Station. We're asking them, once they start testing, to try to figure out a way of creating an office here. You might like it. Your employees probably live here and they drive down to the Silicon Valley, so why don't you move the facility here so they don't have to drive as far? Google is one of the companies that is testing out at Waymo. It's supposed to be top secret, but I guess I just said it. But there's a number of other companies here that could create some test beds or some offices here as well. So we went out, and we're a little agency of 20 people, so we competed for an autonomous vehicle demonstration project. It's called the Automated Driving System Project, and we actually went out and we won one of the grants. But the transportation needs are changing because the population is growing older. The demographics are going older, and people tend to live in the city, but we still have suburban needs out in the suburbs, so we have to provide mobility options for our citizens. So we applied for the automated driving system and does these 4 things. We're going to expand mobility options, advance safety. We're really excited about this. We competed with over 50 other agencies, including state departments of transportation, universities, and we were the only allocation on the West Coast for this. And the first pilot project is at Rossmore. The average age is 78 years old. People are giving up their driver's license. They see a lot of accidents. People run stop signs. There's no stoplights in Rossmore. But the idea is to run a shared autonomous vehicle around that facility to lower the reliance on a car, and then bring County Connection into Rossmore to make the handoff so that people can then go out to go shopping. We just did it. We're going to do a documentary, or we're getting filmed for a documentary for a PBS on innovations in Bay Area transit. And the producers asked, why is CCTA doing it? And I said, that's a great question. It really should be at a higher level, but that's not what their focus is. So, first and last mile, we're looking at Rossmore. We had 5 elderly senior citizens in the bus, and one of the guys is losing his eyesight, so the DMV took his driver's license away. He asked, can I drive after 5? Can I get a ride after 5? I said, these cars drive day or night, and they're on-demand service, so if you want to go out with your wife at night and go to the clubhouse, it'll come and get you, and it'll take you to the clubhouse. Providing mobility options. And then we have a higher than average absentee rate at the county hospital. And so we did a documentary on C-SPAN about our testing here in Contra Costa County at Gomentum Station. And it was filmed on C-SPAN, and the guy was working out, Dr. Troy Kaji was working out in Southern California. He said, hey, that guy works in my county. And so he called us. He said, if you can ever help us, we have an absentee rate, and one of the excuses is we can't get transit. We can't get a ride in to see the doctor, which creates a couple problems. One, the doctor's time is wasted. Number 2 is that minor issue becomes major, and you're all going to pay for it in the long run. So let's figure out how to use technology to lower the absentee rate, get the people the care, and make better use of the doctor's time. So that's test number 2. The other piece of this is we're going to test a restraining system. So if you think about a car that drives itself, you got to restrain a wheelchair, and you have to restrain the occupant. How do you do that? Technology. So we're trying to figure that out, and then ultimately trying to figure out how many vehicles will run on Interstate 680. We're saying it's 3,000 vehicles per lane per hour. What the highway capacity manual says it's 2,000 vehicles per lane per hour. But if you can get a 50% increase of throughput through the existing infrastructure, you may not have to widen Interstate 680 because population is slated to grow by 31% by the year 2055. So you're going to get a population growth here in Contra Costa County, and we're going to have to manage that need for transportation. So that's the idea of that ADS grant. We also got another grant, Mobility as a Service. So what Jason was talking about was a Clipper card, a single point payment. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Is Jason still here? Okay, good. All right. So by the way, this is the reason why we're going. We went out and we competed for what they call an ATC MTD grant. It's one of their innovation grants by USDOT. Now, once again, this is the second grant last year that we got from the Trump administration in California, which is pretty cool. This is actually not Contra Costa County. This is Alameda County. But the point here is that if you took all these cars away and just looked at the passengers, most of these cars are single occupant vehicle. You'd see a lot of space available on 80, but yet this is the worst commute in the Bay Area. At least when I worked for Caltrans, when I was the district director here in District 4 in 2001, 2002, this was the number one westbound going into San Francisco. It's still the same, and it's getting worse, as you can see. So we thought about how do we develop a single platform that puts all of your assets into place and analyze it and give you the best options to go from point A to point B. So we thought mode shift. And we have a project that we're looking at. We call it Project Olympics. And the reason why we call it Project Olympics is 1984, the Olympics were held in Los Angeles and the freeway system worked just fine. Why? Because Peter Uberroth said, let's scare people away. Let's tell them to go on vacation, split the shifts, change the way they come into work every day. And the freeway system in LA worked great. They did the same in Atlanta during their Olympics. A lot of the same strategies, a lot of transportation demand management strategies that work great. So how do we just get about 3 to 5% of the people to change their mode from a single occupant vehicle into something else? How do we entice that? So it's going to have to be a number of things, but a platform is part of it. And so we're also trying to make sure that we continue this effort or this trend of millennials not wanting to drive a car. So once you drive a car, when I was 16, I was first in line. I remember this like it was yesterday. My dad and I passed the test. I got into the 57. We have a 1957 Chevy convertible. I took the driving test. I had my driver's license. And from then on, I drove. And before that, all I ever used was my bicycle. And I never rode my bike. I ride my bike every now and again, sir. But not as often as I used to. So how do we make sure these young folks continue the trend of not having driver's licenses, not driving a car? We need to provide better service. There's also reduction in driver's license, so that trend is continuing. And the young people and myself actually are analyzing it's cheaper to do a shared ride than it is to own your own car. So Tim Hale, he doesn't own a car. So he Ubers everywhere or Lyfts everywhere. Uber or Lyft, both, huh? Both. It's actually cheaper than owning a car. And it's getting more convenient. So if you can get the price of travel down to, let's say, 20 cents a mile, you do the calculations, you're probably not going to own a car if it gets down that low. So how do we do that? So this is kind of and Tim developed this slide, but the idea is to aggregate all your assets, because in the old days you had a bus, you had a train, you had a car. Today you have a lot more assets out there. You got car share, you got Uber, Lyft, you've got scooters, you've got electric bicycles. You got to know their position. You got to know what they cost. You got to know where they are and how often you can use them. But out pops the services after all that's analyzed, and so you get a better trip planner. I want to go from point A to point B. It gives you a multitude of options: greenest option, fastest option, whatever option. Scheduling. Here, this is where Clipper fits in, is uniform payment. So uniform payment technically isn't one card. It's one card across all modes. So right now, the shortfall of Clipper is you can't use it. You can use it for BART or for your transit agencies that have signed on, and you can use it. That's it. You can't use it for some of the scooters until we start integrating all this together. So we believe that this mobility on demand or MOS platform will help us integrate all those different options and highlight where we can make changes, and we can help MTC make the right decisions on how that card's going to work in the future. And we like the idea that right now all of your assets are held in the card. We want it all in the back room. We want more flexibility for you to make it more easier, because that way we won't hear any more complaints about your card. We're going to hear nothing but service is great, the connections are perfect, we're taking transit, thank you. And that's the goal. And then, so this is kind of the partnerships that we have for our MOS grant. It's we got $8 million from USDOT. It's about $17.9 million project. So it's great for our economy. It's great for us here in the Bay Area. It's a 3-year pilot project. Actually, it's a 3-year program. We're going to roll it out on Interstate 680. Second phase is for our county. Third phase is the Bay Area wide. And by the way, the Bay Area is getting bigger, right? Because people are coming in from Modesto and other places. So our footprint is expanding. And I'll just run through this micromobility. I'm pretty sure you know that. How many of you have taken a scooter? Very dangerous. Wear a helmet. I'll always wear a helmet. Electric bikes. I liked it. We like electric bikes. As much as I like to pedal and Bruce drives over the hill there, electric bikes, I think, are a wave of the future. These are some of the benefits. We hired a young intern. She's now at UCLA. Natalie, and so she's did a paper on our benefits of micromobility. We're very proud of her. And then just lastly, these are kind of smart city communities of the future. This slide is actually out of place. So that electric vehicle in the future is going to be a mobile power source. And we're working with a company that's developed inverters. And so what happens when you have a power wall is you have solar panels on top, charges the Tesla battery, and then you draw off the Tesla battery. You can draw off for your charging your car, you can draw off for your house. But in the future, a person that is cheap like myself, I'll park here, I'll charge up here for free, I'll drive home, I'll plug it into the inverter, and I can actually charge and run my house off my car. That's the future. And so you have a lot of options. But if you're my neighbor and you have a heart monitoring machine and we have a rolling blackout or a brownout for whatever reason, I can roll my car over there. You can put a cord onto my car, an extension cord, and you can make sure that you have a heart monitor that works. So there's a lot of flexibility in the future for transportation in the area of power. And we know that if we're going to have a 58% zero-emission fleet turnover, we have to have inductive charging, because that's very, very important. How many of you, we have staff at CCTA that actually never go to a store to shop. They actually just look on a catalog, buy a shirt or a pair of pants or dress or whatever, and then they never, if they don't fit, they send it back, right? And it's free. And they tell me, oh, Randy, you got to do it. It's free. You just send it back. Well, they're splitting loads. They're causing more congestion, but it's an unintended consequence of having that satisfaction of being able to get that product right to your doorstep and then make a decision right there. So it's causing problems for us that we never had before. Home delivery. Do you shop for groceries the same way? Safeway? Yeah. See, I'm not trying to pick on Fifi, but I have heard her talk about how she got the greatest steak the other night and she didn't even have to walk anywhere to get it. And then ultimately, have you had anything drone delivered to you yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Anybody? Well, that's the wave of the future is drones. And then we have one of the areas that we're worried about is the built environment. We have to modify built environment. So BART stations is a classic example. So it's built for many, many years ago, but now you've got a multitude of different modes making changes in that parking lot across the street. So how does BART then make sure that their parking lots operate better with all these different options? And so we've hired a consultant to develop what we call a shared mobility hubs design for our county to make sure that our parking lots are set up in the future to handle that. Automated workforce, I did see this. There was an automated coffee maker. It was going back and forth, and then it would sit there and like this, and then it would do all this stuff and make coffee. We actually don't have that here, but we have an automated receptionist that some of you might have used. And so we're trying to use technology. When we hired Fifi, she said, I'm not sitting out there all by myself all day long and only 3 people come by and see me, right? So put me in the back. So we found a replacement for Fifi out in the front. So she's doing a lot better in the back. And an automated workforce. Home deliveries. We actually tested this Starship for a while in Concord. Concord had a test. Personal robots. And the last thing is every other household in America has cable. Every other household now has Alexa. So we've had a conversation with Alexa. How do you then mine that Alexa to provide you when you wake up in the morning? It says, please don't leave today. I know you want to leave at 8:05, but why don't you leave at 8:20 and you're going to make it to work exactly at the same time? That information is available. When I get in my car in the morning, my Apple Watch tells me 14 minutes to work because I live 4 miles that way to work. We actually moved to be closer to work by 2 miles. So I used to live 6 miles. Now I live 4 miles. It's a great ride in the morning. So how do we mine that connectivity with your houses and provide you with better information to travel? That's my 60-page slide. Thank you.
Thank you. I have two questions, and I don't know if this has been thought out. One was that you discussed that in the future we're going to have power sources in our cars and our solar panels and electricity we bring home in walls. Without some sort of legislation forcing people to put those type of electrical services inside each home, such as, when they have safety legislative mandates, do you think it's going to, without that nudge, they'll still be able to get there? And the same thing I have to say is for the the multimodal, different type of transit platform that's going to mix in with Lyft and Uber and these scooters. Uber and Lyft are things called TNCs. So if we nudge our legislators that, tomorrow you guys have a TNC program, make sure that if you give them a license, they follow up and use Clipper cards besides their mobile phones. Would that be something that, CCTA would work with legislators to kind of force them along? Because without a mandate, it's a lot harder.
So I failed to mention this, and that's a great question, and let me expand on that a little bit. So what we use here is also rewards and incentives. So you're talking about a regulatory framework. So there's a company that we're talking to about bringing scooters to America. So they came to us and asked us, would we be willing to help them deploy these scooters in America? We said, yes, come to Contra Costa County. So we had meetings, set them up with meetings with the cities all along with BART stops. What they look for is regulatory framework, which most scooter companies, they don't talk about regulatory framework. So what they would like to know is how fast can we go on which routes? Where do you want us to park? With technology, they can put beacons in the shrubs, and they say you can only detach your payment system by parking in this area. So it's all well defined. And then the speeds, they don't want you going 35 miles an hour on a scooter down a certain road. So then we're just much like your golf cart, when you go off into the rough and you're not supposed to go, that the golf cart shuts down and you got to back it out and then stay on the correct path. These vehicles want to do that. But so you got a regulatory framework, but you also need, in our opinion, nudges. And so in the case of electric vehicles, somebody asked, well, I was not very supportive of the Pavley bill when they allowed the hybrids, the zero emission vehicles in the HOV lanes. But actually it works pretty well because the incentive was to buy an electric vehicle, zero emission vehicle, and you get access with a single occupant in the HOV lane. And so there was a lot of people buying cars that allowed them to get into the HOV lane that were actually working in the Silicon Valley. Then they passed legislation that says those stickers are only good for 3 years, so they got to trade the cars in and turn them over, which creates a secondary market for those electric vehicles. But the other piece is we've been working on rewards and incentives. And so we started with a company called Scoop. And Scoop, we started at $15,000. And a portion of that $15,000 was advertising. So we spent $2 to match up riders with drivers. And then because we didn't have enough drivers, we switched. We put $2 for finding drivers to match up with riders. And then we went back again to incentivize riders with drivers. So the program was so popular, we added $50,000, and we ended up to $100,000. This is commute alternatives money, so we couldn't pave with this because that one was one of the comments that I got from contractors. You could have paved with that $100,000, which it wouldn't pave a lot of. It paved like 1,200 feet at 1 inch, so it was not going to go very far in our county. But the point was it worked. And you get better information about where they're connecting, so you can kind of customize your pilot project in those areas. We're looking for State Route 4, and we're looking for Interstate 80. But what happened, most of the partnerships occurred in South County along Interstate 680 between Danville, Santa Rosa, heading into Dublin. And so that's what we saw. And so at $100,000, we quit. But imagine if MTC would have provided $1 million for incentives to do carpooling. One of the biggest incentives, or one of the incentives that we used to have in the Bay Area was carpools went across the bridges for free. And when I was the district director in 2001 and 2002 for District 4, I went home to Sacramento because I didn't move. I lived here and then went home on the weekends. But I was driving by at 2:30 on a Friday, and I'd see a bunch of people on the shoulder. I go, what's going on? Well, they're waiting until 3 o'clock so there was 2 people in the car. They could go across the toll bridge for free. So they were actively looking, much like what we're trying to do with Scoop now, they were actively looking for those partners so that they could cross the bridge and save, in those days, $3. That's an incentive and reward. So that's equally important as part and parcel to a regulatory framework. Is we've got to figure out what is that business model that will entice people into alternate modes of transportation, but also keep them there. And that's the hard part.
Thank you. Other comments?
I could talk to you all night, actually. There's so many interesting points in your presentation, and there's just a couple that I'll mention that peg things that are big things for me. One's on a personal level, the mention of elderly, changing population and mobility. My mother actually lives in a small town of 10,000 agricultural town, and there's no publicly funded senior transportation, and she has macular degeneration. So she's facing the same very issues that you're talking about. So I'd love to see those sorts of things solved in this context. But the other thing that you'll hear me harp on over and over again is you mentioned jobs and jobs and jobs and stuff. And one of the things that I loved hearing from you was all of this, the networking that you're doing, bringing, sometimes it's research projects or sometimes it's, trying to cater to employers to get out here, because I'm personally the person who probably bangs this the hardest here is just reducing vehicle miles is going to involve a lot more of incentivizing employers to not keep building density down there, but to put it in Brentwood or put it in Tracy.
Right.
And that's what's going to take 10% off of the freeways and give us that back. The only other alternatives I always say is, other than that, is we just start writing more projects that end with a B on the end of them, and unless we're ready for the big dig here in the Bay Area, because we've built on every square inch of something that could have had rail or a bus or an additional lane of traffic. Now all of that, even under eminent domain, is cost prohibitive. A mile of that is just not doable. So unless we're ready to dig underground, we better start moving jobs as well as people.
Yeah, we have a proposal. It's called Innovate 680. It's a 7-pronged approach at dealing with congestion. And one of the approaches is bus on shoulder. So the outside shoulder, when traffic gets below 35 miles an hour on the main line, the buses can swing out to the outside shoulder. So I ask our legislators, what do you think it would cost to put 10 feet of pavement on either side of Interstate 680? All the way down to the Silicon Valley. Let's just go all the way through Contra Costa County. That is very, very expensive. 80 you cannot do, because on one side is the ocean, on the other side are those, well, you could do it on the other side, and as a civil engineer, we just go right through and wipe out all those buildings and do that. But yeah, it'd be billions and billions of dollars. So we're trying to maximize also, not only make our system more efficient, but take use of the existing infrastructure that we can. So in Minnesota, over 300 shoulder miles are being used on a daily basis during peak hour. When I was in the director's office, we authorized a pilot down in San Diego on the 805. It ran for 2 years, no problems. But it's hard. People want different results, but they want us to use the same tools. And that is a frustrating part for us as staff. So we have a really, really good team here at CCTA. So if you take me out of the equation, the 19 other people, they're pretty good in what they do, and they're in lockstep of trying to find new ways of dealing with this congestion.
By the way, you also mentioned, the app, in attempting to connect people with other options and stuff like that. And I just wanted to share recently in Walnut Creek, I work in Walnut Creek, I live in Clayton, but I needed to get around downtown or whatever, and I discovered the Transit app. That thing is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it does a lot of things that you were describing.
Yeah, so I have the Transit app. So I was actually had the privilege of being invited to speak at Go Nevada 2020. So it was a kickoff to the Consumer Electronics Show. There's a very, very innovative MPO down in southern Nevada called the RTC, Regional Transportation Commission. So at that meeting, they announced a partnership with Transit and what's it, Mumbai? What's that company called? Masabi? Masabi. And so there's no Clipper card. What they have is you go get your ticket right there, and you have near field communication. The gate pops open, you walk right in. That place is amazing. They are. I told them, you guys are cleaning our clocks in southern Nevada, and it's embarrassing. But we try to keep up with that, but we don't control the gates. The gates are controlled by not the transit operators. That's an issue. Very, very well done, Transit. It knows where you are too. So if you download Transit, it knows if you're in Southern Nevada, you can just go on that app and buy a ticket, and then go on any option you want down in Southern Nevada. It knows where you are.
I got a question. You said something about a pilot in San Diego about 8:05. Did that for some reason stop at some point, or how did it fizzle out or whatever?
It doesn't fizzle out. So what we agreed to with the California Highway Patrol when I was at Caltrans is that we'd run a 2-year pilot and determine whether or not the safety features and the wear and tear on the pavement and those kinds of things. At the end of the 2 years, it stopped. And the report shows no problems. So then we went in, and Tim's gone in and said, hey, we want to put buses on shoulders on 680. It's the 8th worst commute in the Bay Area. Let's utilize the pavement. And they're saying no. And so then we tried to pass legislation, and the legislation was stopped. So now we're back at it trying to do it administratively to say, hey, let's just try to run another pilot. It works great in Minnesota. If it works in Minnesota, why not here? The other option is, think about this. You've got a bus. It's gonna merge over 4 lanes. It's going to get in the HOV lane. You're late for a meeting in San Jose, and you're behind this bus who's not going 65, 70, 75. They're going probably 55. And you are really upset because you're in that lane wanting to go faster. And so it's called the snail effect. So you can only go as fast as the person in front of you. And if they're going 55, you're going to go 55, the whole length. And then they weave across 4 lanes, which causes a ripple effect back, and then they go off. Nothing against buses. That's why a lot of them choose to stay in the outside lane, because they don't want to merge across and back. It's a lot of trouble. We want to stop that. It's a pretty easy move out. What happens if somebody's in front of them? Well, you got sensors that will say, hey, there's somebody in front of you. You signal, you move back. Signs are regulatory signs. Says transit lane only. So you can't drive as a car, but as a bus you can. Very simple. Very easy.
Or lane split. No, I'm just joking.
Can't lane split with a bus.
Anybody else? More comments?
I just want to thank you for your time, for your effort. I know it's late and you do this voluntarily, so thank you for your comments and making sure that we're doing the things right. And if you have any other comments or you want to invite me back, I'll be happy to come back. Thank you.
Mr. Iwasaki, it was a pleasure. Matt, I think we'll be going over the release of the compliance checklist for Measure J growth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Every 2 years, one of the main functions of this group is to review the Growth Management Program compliance checklists. A majority of you have seen your fair share of checklists. And I just wanted to bring this to you because we're taking it through our board this month. And we have the checklist in your packet as proposed. There are no major changes to the checklist this time. We did not add any new requirements. We did start the conversation on adding some new requirements with our board, things like cities documenting the number of electric vehicle charging stations they're installing, trying to get a number of ADUs being constructed separate from the total number of house permits, things like that. The board wasn't ready to add requirements at this date just because we know the measure is up for grabs in March, and if the measure passes, there are going to be a whole lot of new requirements on the checklist. So they wanted to just kind of wait and see how that went, and then broach the subject at that time. And those things I mentioned will probably be requirements through the new measure, especially the electric vehicle reporting. But if the measure doesn't pass or something like that, we will ignite the conversation with the board on getting some new items added to the checklist, because this is really the only way you can truly get information out of a city without pulling teeth. It kind of is pulling teeth, but there is a carrot for them, and the carrot is their 18% return to source funds, as Randy talked about, their pothole repair fund. So cities will do just about anything to get that money, and if it's on the checklist, they've got to do it. So the checklist, as I mentioned, is mostly unchanged. We tried to add some clarifying language to the checklist itself and to the instructions to make it easier for our local jurisdictions to complete the checklist. As you may know, a lot of our jurisdictions in the county are small, and there's a lot of turnover in staff, so they don't have a lot of resources to do this. So we want to make it as easy as possible, but still we want the residents and the CCTA to be able to get something out of these checklists. So please take a look. If you have any questions about what's in the checklist, let me know. We don't expect there to be any issues moving forward. And when the checklists do start coming back to this committee, as you can see from the staff report, checklist season, as we call it, opens April 1st. Cities can start submitting their checklist, and then they start coming to you. So the earliest we would anticipate seeing a checklist is May. That's the earliest we've ever been able to get one onto your agenda. Generally, they start in earnest in June and July because folks know the money isn't available till after the fiscal year begins July 1st. So when they do start coming in, at the first meeting we have close to the May timeframe, I'll do what I call my checklist primer, and I go over the checklist and what you should be looking for as reviewers of the checklist. It's kind of, so if you're looking at the checklist, there are some parts you can skip over. People will put their entire 200-page capital improvement program list of projects in the document. You don't need to look at all 200 pages, but it's going to be there. So I'll give you some hints of what you should be looking for and what you don't need to look at, because as Fifi can tell you, some of the checklists we get are about 400 pages. Some are about 70 or 80 pages, and we'll give you an idea of what pages you really need to be looking at, and what we ask that you look at. What you double check and what you just kind of, some things they submit the same form every year. They have to have a transportation demand management element or an ordinance, so that they're doing, providing transit passes to employees, that they're doing, like here in the Contra Costa Center, they provide transit passes and transit subsidies. Every city is required to have an ordinance that encourages that, but they don't have to update the ordinance every year. They submit it to us once, and then it's on file. So I'm not going to say, if you've already seen, Clayton's TDM ordinance, you don't need to look at it every year. Once it's on file, it's there. So that's what I'll come to you probably in April or May and share with you, just so you aren't wasting your time when when reviewing the checklist. So that's all I have today. If you have any questions today about the checklist, I can certainly answer them. Always feel free to email me if you have specific questions.
I had a question. So as we go over Measure J checklists like we did in the previous year, advisory staff, and I'm sure the commissioners who actually get to review it also, is there a mechanism in there to object to the certain use of funds in order for them to nudge them along so the following year they use it more towards transit-oriented activities, or is there any kind of guidelines for that?
So there's a item at the back of the packet, part of this item starting on page 933. Is that a 9? I didn't bring my readers. 933, and that actually it starts a few pages before that. It's 929, and that basically documents the return to source funds and how the eligible expenditures for that. So you can see, let's see, there's some descriptions there. The better descriptions are, let's see. Yeah, they are in, actually,
I think
this
it's 931, Section C, looks like, withholding of funds.
Yes. So basically, what constitutes or what allows us to withhold funds is non-compliance with the growth management program. So the city does have they can spend the money as long as it's an eligible cost. Transit is one. Pothole repair, street repair is another. Bike and ped infrastructure, like laying down new paths, that's eligible as well. So as long as their expenditures are eligible, they are still in compliance. What they can be found out of compliance for is, well, not reporting on any one of the 13 items on the checklist. And there's also things like, each city belongs to a regional transportation planning committee. That's the sub areas, East County, West County, Central County, and Southwest. Is doing something like refusing to, so each sub area, whenever there's a housing development, the developers pay into a transportation fund. So, say in Central County, it's a few $1,000s for each new home. If one city, so they all decide on what projects that money gets spent on. When there's enough money in the fund, they start saying, okay, we're going to spend money on this project here, this money on this project here. If a certain city says, oh, no, we're not sharing our funds, we want to spend it all locally, that would put them out of compliance with their local RTPC and out of compliance with the growth management program. So there are certain things that will instantly get folks out of compliance with the growth management program. Your job is to review what they did, what they submitted as part of the checklist, and you can, make the call if you think they are out of compliance. Generally, what I try and do ahead of the checklist making it to you is get them, kind of herd them into compliance. I don't want to bring something to you where the city is just obviously failing at their attempts to be compliant with the growth management program, because it creates a lot of issues, both with the city and with the authority. So I hope by the time they get here, they are in compliance. But if you do see anything that you think is not,
maybe they could do a better job.
They could do a better. You can always encourage them to do a better job, both in their reporting and what they're actually doing. So, if you think, especially if you're the representative of a city and you know that the city's, got a great pavement condition index and there's no potholes around, but and that you need some new bike lanes or you need a new transit shelter, you could say, hey, city X, you've got really good streets. Maybe you should start thinking about spending your money on transit or biking, something like that. That's certainly within your jurisdiction as members of the CAC, and as well as going back to, if you're a city rep on this board, you can go back to your city and encourage them to spend the money on different expenditures.
Thank you so much.
I have a few comments. Matt, historically, when the compliance season begins, we typically see maybe one or two, and then they start coming in. And that sort of fills our agenda. Are we looking again to limit how many checklists we will have for each meeting? And if we receive additional, would we be able to perhaps have a pre-committee meeting with certain members of the CAC to review it? So, for instance, there was a time when we had 6. There was no way. We'd be here till 2 in the morning. But I'm thinking if we have 6, perhaps we could have a pre-committee meeting with certain members of the CAC so that we could review them and then come back to the board here or to the committee here with a more of a
Insight.
Priority?
How can I do that?
Priority?
Yeah. So that we could, in fact, take care of that. So that's my first question. I'll wait until you have.
Yeah, so this committee does have an ad hoc growth management compliance checklist subcommittee that you can convene at any time. It hasn't been convened in a while. So, if you want to convene that committee ahead of checklist season and have a core group kind of look at them first and provide some initial comments, that's certainly that's your committee, this committee's prerogative. I did include in the staff report, I carried it over from last time when we did have that. I think we had an epic last meeting of the year with 5 checklists. I never want to have happen again. You didn't want to have happen again. So I did put in the staff report again this time saying we would limit the number at any particular meeting to 3 checklists. 3 is still a lot, but it's doable. You can't put anything else on the agenda. And it's just a lot to hear all at once. But at least we have a limit. And we told people if they're submitting all at the end of checklist season, they're going to get bumped to later months, so they won't get their money till later. So that hopefully will encourage them to submit earlier. But yeah, we have a limit that we're going to. Phoebe and I aren't planning on adding more than 3 checklists to any one agenda. But if you guys want to revisit the growth management ad hoc committee, the checklist subcommittee, that's fine.
Receiving that, more than 3, it's brutal.
Yeah.
And it's not fair to the representatives that sit here on the committee who want to comment on either the advantages and the progress that their particular city is making, and or make suggestions as to where they think perhaps maybe the city should be addressing their concerns. So just for our new members, the ad hoc committee does mean that you would be coming here. There would be extra hours for you. And if you want to sit on it, I'm happy to sit on that ad hoc committee. I did that for 3 different years. I found it to be extremely beneficial. And we actually got out of here before 8:30, 9 o'clock. So that was good. So you may just want to put that in the back of your head. Also, I was wondering if we could, when you see the checklists that are not coming in, perhaps maybe one of us or a few of us could go back to our city council and just nudge them as a reminder, because I know that there's some cities that just don't, they just have one planner and they don't have the staff, so it becomes really difficult, and or they're new and their seasoned people have left. So perhaps if you wouldn't mind looking at that and coming back to us and letting us know that this particular city needs a nudge.
Maybe what I can do is during checklist season, just maybe a standing item on the agenda would be a status report. Yeah. And we don't have a Martinez member, do we? Yeah. Just want to remind you that Martinez still hasn't submitted last year's, last cycle's checklist. So they have a year, they had a year from June 30th. So they told me they're working on it, so I'm hoping to get that. So you may get a checklist ahead of the others, but it's not really ahead, it's way behind.
It's in arrears. Maybe one of us can attend a Martinez City Council meeting.
They definitely have staffing issues, and their city
Yeah.
manager is aware of it. I'm trying everything I can do. I've volunteered to walk them through it, but it's tough.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yes. I do like your idea, Yolanda, but I think it's imperative that whatever checklist city that we're working on, the representative should be part of that ad hoc committee as well. So that means that the committee wouldn't be the same all the time. But I think that would be important.
I can agendize a growth management program checklist subcommittee item, so we can maybe have a little more discussion about it. And
I think that would be best.
okay, we'll add that to the next meeting agenda.
Because also I'm concerned about open meeting violations. So
Exactly.
we need to make sure we be careful about that.
We'll get that agendized and have an official discussion.
Yeah, it would be an ad hoc, so it would, yeah.
Just to get the ad hoc committee formed again, reconvened, we'll put it on the agenda.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. We have 3.1, which is CCTA committee reports by CAC members. Do we have anything from APC, PC, or the board meetings reports? Okay, we'll move on. Number 4 is CAC members. Any staff comments? Yes.
I just wanted to announce our Redefining Mobility Summit, which is, I know some of you have attended in the past. It takes place every March in San Ramon at Bishop Ranch at their really cool facility down there. It basically it's March 10th this year. I'll hand out these cards. Do you want to? And basically, it's Randy, who you just saw, in a room full of his peers and all the experts he talks to from around the world, people who are working on these very innovative technology projects. And they're all in the same room. A lot of transportation professionals and a lot of just interested folks come to see what's going on in transportation. And it's a really cool event. So if you are interested, you can talk to Fifi about registering.
A question on that, would we get a discount on that like we did last year?
Yes, there is a discount available, a promotion code rather, for the committees. I will email that flyer out to everyone. Should you be interested, you are welcome to register using that promotional code.
Thank you.
I do have a question, Matt. and I should have asked it when Randy was here. I went to the last Byron Airport meeting, and they were pretty stalled on the environment. There was a big issue about the company that was, or the agency that was handling the environmental study. And because I know that we're looking at expanding that airport and building businesses out there and having jobs out there. The meeting was excellent, but they were stalled with one agency that wasn't getting their job done. Is it possible that we could have an update on what's going on at the airport?
Yeah, we work pretty closely with the county staff who manage the airport, so I will see if I can get one of the airport planners or people in that department to come provide an update on just what the county's vision is for the Byron Airport. Is that kind of what you had in mind?
Yes, and especially the expansion.
Okay.
There were a lot of good points, but there was some, yes, an update would be perfect. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll be moving on to correspondence, news clippings. Anybody have a news clipping that they looked up? Okay, our
May I?
future, excuse me, sorry.
Sorry, Claire Linder Concord, I just wanted to point out that there were 3 deaths this past holiday weekend of pedestrians and cyclists. One in Oakland, one in Berkeley, and another in Concord. Sorry.
That's tough. Thank you for that. And hopefully, as Mr. Awasaki was saying, the city spend more money on safety as far as pedestrians, because I was in another city the other day and I saw that in the rainy weather, people were barely looking for any bikes or people, and they were just about bumping up to, just because it was raining and they weren't even paying attention. So hopefully that gets some look into. Okay. Future agenda items are attachment. Anybody have any request?
I'm just disappointed that the changeover in leadership happened so soon, because our former executive person was plugged into the Silicon Valley leadership group, is all. But I'm thrilled that Wayne is amazing and his presentation was fabulous.
Okay, we are adjourned. To our next meeting will be scheduled February 26th at 6 p.m. I look forward to seeing everybody here. Thank you. And excuse me for anything I messed up on my first meeting.